I stand here before you to speak about the issue of mental health issues. And as I speak to you, there's another family in my constituency who are trying to come to terms with the very untimely death of their 16-year-old daughter. There is another community gripped by grief, and it just isn't right. It has to be every parent's worst nightmare to see their own flesh and blood feel so lost, feel so down, and to see no way out. Unfortunately, I have seen a significant rise in the numbers over the recent couple of months, and particularly since COVID took a grip of this country. And unfortunately as well, age or gender is no barrier. And I would have to say to you, Minister, within my constituency, the numbers are high and the age profile is young. Today I talked to you about a 16-year-old girl. Last week it was an 18-year-old young man. A number of weeks before that it was another 18-year-old man. And before that, Minister, we had one family in Cavan Town that lost two members of their family, a brother and sister, a week apart, to suicide. Minister, I stand here before you that while there are wonderful people on the ground, and I mean exemplary in terms of their volunteerism, the help that is there with the HSE, the help that is there with Pieta House, it is still not enough. I really feel passionate that as a county and as a constituency, we need statutory help. We need the help of an organisation like Jigsaw. I have mentioned this to Minister Butler before. We're all new, I suppose, to this position of government, but in opposition benches, I did say this before too. The support is needed by an organisation such as Jigsaw. We also need the help of a scan nurse. And I'm told that a scan nurse is a suicide crisis assessment nurse. And that nurse would provide assistance and support immediately. That people would, that when they go to their GP, that a GP has a contact person to give that person who's having suicidal thoughts immediately. That they wouldn't be sent to A&E, that they wouldn't go on a waiting list, that they could be attended to immediately, Minister. So I'm asking for three things today. Further help in primary care psychologist support. I'm asking for a scan nurse to be allocated to Cavan Monaghan, and I'm also asking you, Minister, to look seriously at the potential of putting Jigsaw into Cavan Monaghan as well.
And can I thank both deputies, both Deputy Morricu and Deputy Smith, for raising this issue here today. And any loss of life or suicide is a tragedy, and I don't want to actually put the people that you have brought to the floor of the Dáil into just any life. It's their life and it's their families that have been impacted. So, Deputy Morricu, you spoke about two individuals, the Taff family and the Brown family. And Eve, you didn't mention names, but you talk about the age profile and the gender from your constituency. And I think there isn't a constituency in the country that hasn't been hit by suicide, or no family members that are actually grieving the loss of a loved one at this moment in time. And you talked about the multiple suicides within families. That is not an unusual case either, unfortunately. And those families, that grief really knocks the community so much, and in such a short space of time. I have a script here, and Deputy Butler sends her apologies. She would like to have been here to answer it. And I know she has spoken to you, Deputy Smith, in relation to the Jigsaw, and she also reiterated for me to assure you that she is taking both requests in relation to Jigsaw on board. In relation to your scan nurse, I will also relay this back to Deputy Butler and the primary care psychology. I will read the script that was presented to me, but I do also would like to take on board the fact that you would like to know about the protocols. That is awful important. But I think it's important that the protocols aren't just read out here. I think they should convene a meeting with Deputy Butler in relation with the HSE and the local CHO on the ground, for that there's a clear understanding around protocols and deliverable, tangible actions. Each suicide affects not just family and friends, but the community itself. It is important to ensure that strong supports are in place to help family, friends and the community to deal with a tragedy. Protection of the vulnerable continues to be a government priority, especially in challenging times, and those with mental health issues are often amongst the most vulnerable in society. Tackling suicide is an important element of this. Connecting for Life is Ireland's national strategy to reduce suicide. Though it is due to end this year, Minister Butler intends to bring a memo to Government, to Cabinet, in the next couple of weeks, recommending the extension of the strategy to 2024. Implementation of Connecting for Life has involved a cross-departmental, cross-sectorial approach overseen by the Department of Health. The HSE National Office for Suicide Prevention was specifically established to coordinate suicide prevention efforts around the country and the implementation of the Connecting for Life. The support of the National Office for Suicide Prevention funding has increased from 3.7 million in 2010 to the level of 30 million currently, and an extra 2.7 million was provided in 2015 for additional resource officers for suicide prevention and for priority actions under Connecting for Life, including Louth, Cavan and Monaghan. While I cannot comment on individual cases, but other than to say that I express my deepest sympathies to every one of them and to other people that are listening in here that has lost families through suicide, whether it's today or in the past, the grief never leaves them, and I want to acknowledge that. However, in Ireland, a coroner decides whether somebody has died by suicide. This is a legal decision, not a medical determination made by the doctors or the HSE. And the Central Statistics Office publishes the national data on suicides based on coroner's finding. A key part of the Connecting for Life is the development of local CFLs. All 17 have now been launched, including the Connecting for Life, as I say, in Cavan, Monaghan. A suicide prevention action plan for Laois, Offaly, Longford, Westmeath, Louth and Meath suicide prevention action plan. The local plans were developed in collaboration of the whole of community.
Thank you, Minister.
Any situation of these types, I am happy to bring to Minister Butler's attention.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Laskin Corlett. Minister, I again would just like to take this opportunity to reiterate the three requests I have from the Minister, and I know you will reliably relay that to her. Number one, that she would come to Cavan to meet with people who are on the front line dealing with these situations when they happen. And as we know, prevention is what we all want. That we have more resources put into psychologist support in primary care. That we get a scan nurse provided for Cavan Monaghan, and that we get Jigsaw. They are the things that we need. That's from talking to the professionals on the ground who are doing that youth intervention mental health service, critically important, as you can see from the numbers that I have read out to you there and the figures. I'd also like to just acknowledge the work of Emer Mulligan, who is Resource Officer and Suicide Prevention Officer with the HSE, whom I know is doing amazing work on the ground with families and communities. Also Jerry Soden, who's Health and Wellbeing Officer with the GAA, providing immense support for communities and clubs around the county. And also Catherine McAree, who works with Pieta House, providing that bereavement service for families afterwards. I'd ask, Minister, that you reiterate those 3 points to Minister Butler from me. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you very much again, Laska Hirlaka. Again, thank you to the deputies for the constructive way in which we've addressed this topical issue today, because you've come with solutions and suggestions. And I take totally on board everything that you have said there, Deputy Smith. But I do think the convening of a meeting so that the protocols are reiterated, so there's a clear understanding, because that's what Connecting of Life is about. It's about a connecting of the community. And you have already mentioned the local HSE, their involvement, the GAA, the Pieta House. That is exactly what Connecting for Life is about. But it's also about, it's important that we continue to build resilience in all communities to reduce the incidence of suicide. It is also important to ensure that where such a tragedy occurs, we have sufficient supports in place to help those who need it. The HSE National Office for Suicide Prevention works closely with the CHOs and local agencies and communities to deliver strategies and services in the most appropriate manner, in line with the resources available and evolving services. Deputies, rest assured, I will relay your concerns here today, your asks here today of Minister Butler, and I'm sure she would be more than happy to facilitate a meeting there. Deputy Smith and Mark.
Thank you, Minister. Moving on to topic.